Azure Synapse is the leading platform for cloud-scale analytics in any cloud. Part of the reason for that is the flexibility and capability provided to your analytics solutions that will work best for you and your data. Of course, that starts with performance, and most customers still rely heavily on enterprise data warehouses for analytics. So today, we're going to cover the different table types and configurations you can deploy in Azure Synapse Dedicated Pools. Welcome back. I'm Serverless, and this is my video blog where I talk about Azure, data solutions, and a little bit of professional development. Today, I am going to discuss and demonstrate design decisions you'll need to make when you deploy your Star and Snowflake schemas to Azure Synapse for your enterprise data warehouse. Before we jump into that, just another huge thank you for all of the support you all have given as I charged past the 400 subscriber mark here on the channel and over 14,000 views total. Please continue to share, like, comment, and if you're not subscribed, please do so now. So, jumping into today's topic, I want to restate that this discussion is solely toward Azure Synapse Dedicated Pools. The serverless pools work very differently, so let's make sure to not confuse the two. When we're building a data warehouse, at a very high level, we generally have three types of tables. We have fact tables. These are your big tables that hold all the transactional information from your ERP and other upstream systems. These tables contain quantitative values such as sales information and other things that can be calculated. For instance, quantities of products sold at the price they were sold at. Next, we have dimension tables, commonly referred to these as tables that describe data about the data. These tables tend to be much smaller than fact tables and will have far fewer columns and rows as well. They will hold information that can be used to help give more context to the data in the related facts tables, which are usually full of unique identifiers like customer ID and product ID and more items like this. We'll reference the dimension tables in order to give more context to the lines in the fact table by connecting on keys for analysis and visualization purposes. Lastly, we have integration or staging tables for where you're doing some sort of staging of data for aggregations, calculations, and other activities. Before you can load it into a fact or dimension table, you're going to stage this data. These tables can take a lot of different forms, such as temp tables, external tables, and other options. And they're all going to be used to achieve this goal of serving data for consumption downstream. One of the strengths and a fundamental feature of the massively parallel processing, or MPP engine, behind Synapse Dedicated Pools is the ability to align these tables to allow data to be spread most efficiently across distributions. This notion of how the distributions work and how the data is distributed across 60 compute nodes is a discussion for another time. But just understand, when Synapse runs a query against that data, the work gets divided across 60 compute nodes for faster processing of that query. The basis of how they get distributed and how data gets returned to and from a query is what we want to focus on by looking at the three distributed table types. The three different types that we will discuss here are, first, a hash distributed table type. They're designed for high performance on queries that are run on large tables. And as a rule of thumb, you'll want to set up your fact tables as hash distributed. This is also the default table type in Synapse. Next, we have replicated tables, which will provide the fastest query performance for small tables by replicating across all of the compute nodes a copy of the table. So you want to make sure that you're creating your smaller tables. Most of the time this applies to dimension tables that will allow for quicker returns of data from queries from these replicated tables. Lastly, we have round-robin table distributions. And really, they're the simplest to create and will distribute rows across all of the distributions. So when you load the data, it is very fast. But if you're querying against that data, you'll get slowed down by the movement of the data to return the results from that query. For this reason, you'll use round-robin table types for your integration or your staging tables. Again, these are just guidelines that we provide in our documentation, but make sure to work with an expert to help give you the guidance you need on the data you have and what the best distributions would be for your scenario. We run into a lot of customers who kind of set things up and get running, and truthfully, it's not running as efficiently as they could. So why don't we demonstrate this here in the Azure portal? Okay, so I'm actually going to show a couple different ways to create our table distributions here within Synapse. It's going to default to a hash distributed table, and that's because it's the most common table that are used. Basically, an easy way to do it, although it gives you less control over how you want to set it up, is to just go into your Integrate Hub and use the Copy Data tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and we'll just do a basic task here. We'll pull in the data, we'll connect into my SQL database where my fact table lives. I'm going to connect into my existing SQL database. Now, you may have an error that interactive authoring is disabled. You'll have to go in and hit that, that box to allow that in order to be able to go in and actually traverse these tables. But I'm going to select my table. It's my complaint table. It's about 8 million records. I'll hit next. It's going to ask me if I want to do anything, with any of the partitioning or isolation levels, any kind of timeout, any of those kinds of things, any added columns that I want to create and bring in there as well. And then I can also, of course, preview my data. Then I'm going to select my destination, and you'll see that it gives us the ability, if I use the SQL dedicated pool, it gives me the ability to connect into my workspace, and it will either determine if I want to use an existing table or create a new table. And so I'll just say, let's create a new table. And then it's going to automatically go in and build my my structure of my table, because this doesn't exist. Of course, I could have created it ahead of time if I wanted to. We have some conversion options here, so I can truncate the data and do some different date time operations, things like that, as well as some of our advanced options, around batches and those types of operations. And then it'll walk through. It'll have me do the settings on it. Enable staging, enable logging, any of the fault tolerance. Some of the more advanced options here. Degree of parallelism. Kind of moot point because you're only doing one operation in this this particular item. But you'll see that as we go through, it doesn't actually give us the ability to select the type of distribution that we're creating. So in this type of case, we may not want to use the default being a hash distribution, and so that is one of the drawbacks of using this particular type of deployment. Now, the other option is if we go into our databases and we want to create a new table inside of our workspace. We want to collect into our tables and put new SQL script, and we can add a new table. And in here, you can see that it's going to default to a hash distribution. But if we have a different table type that we want to use, a different table distribution type, we can specify that here as well as build the indexes. So it gives us this default option. The third way would be in Management Studio, and it's going to be similar to what we're seeing here. So you have somewhat flexible ways of building this as you want to create new distribution types. Great. So that's it. Hopefully it gives you a good idea of how to set up these tables, what you should use for specific table types in most cases, what the initial loads of data look like. If there's something I didn't talk about or you want to ask about, throw it in the comments below. You can reach me on social. I try to be pretty easy to find. And otherwise, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.